Greetings to everyone, dear viewers of the Stories and Destinies channel. Today I will share with you stories of a woman who found herself on the border of life and death due to the betrayal of the person closest to her. As you delve into this story, please share in the comments where you are watching our channel from which side of the earth, from which city or village. It always thrills me to imagine how our stories unite people across distance, how they find a resonance in hearts from small northern towns to sun-drenched southern cities. The corridor of the oncology unit seemed infinite, a white tunnel leading to nowhere. Julian was positioned against the wall, observing the doctors who were preparing Clara for discharge. Their movements were careful, almost ritualistic. Clara, or what remained of her, was immobile, like a shadow of herself. Her breathing quickened, resting upon slumped arms, and her skin acquired a bone-like hue. Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4. The judgment, which was given 3 years ago, was now approaching its execution. The doctor with short, violet-colored hair shouted something to her colleagues, and they all took Clara toward the exit. She moved from the pain, but did not make a single sound. She only pressed her lips into a thin line. Julian looked away. Her face, once lively and expressive, had turned into a mask of bone, with open eyes the color of an autumn sky. It was hard to believe that this woman once conquered the world with her energy and intelligence. That this exhausted figure, of whom it seemed only bones covered in dry skin remained, was the same Clara who 9 years ago entered his life with a hurricane of beauty and ambition. Mr. Miller. His silence led to helplessness. Dr. Sterling, an elderly oncologist with eyes that had seen too many deaths, gestured for him to come to his side. His grey hair was smoothed back attentively, but some strands had broken loose, giving him the appearance of a tired philosopher. "Julian, we need to talk," he said when they had gone far enough so that Clara could not hear them. "You won't tell me anything new," Julian responded. "I already know everything." Sterling pressed his lips together. "And yet listen. We have tried all possible chemotherapy protocols. The experimental treatment we have applied in recent months has not yielded results. The metastases have spread too widely, brain, bones, lymph nodes. It is too late that Clara sought help. If it had been in the early stages of the disease, she would have had many more possibilities." The doctor paused, as if it caused him physical pain to pronounce these words. "The immune system is completely depleted. We do everything possible to alleviate the pain, but—" Julian crossed his arms. His gaze stretched down the corridor, concentrating on nothing. "How much time?" The doctor exhaled. 2 or 3 weeks, maximum a month." He placed his hand on Julian's chest. "Do you know her name?" "Clara?" "It means clear, without blemish. It may be a miracle. Just stay close in these final days." The doctor lowered his head. "We cannot help with anything else." As if I hadn't been close in the last 3 years, Julian thought, but he shouted with an expression of gratitude. "That is the role of a husband who feels sad, who is lost. It's been second nature to him." "Are the discharge documents ready?" he asked. "Yes, everything is prepared. The ambulance will take you home. Here are the prescriptions for the illness. This one?" He noted one of the logs. "Only in case of emergency. It is very strong." Julian mechanically took the papers and put them in the car. Placing his hand on the doctor, he headed toward the exit, where the medics had already prepared Clara for transportation. In a second, Clara's eyes met his. Her eyes hidden by morphine, and his eyes cold with an unexpected darkness. She smiled slightly, and that smile was filled with such unpleasant love that Julian felt as if something were draining inside him. Not conscience. That had died long ago, But there is a sad memory that once he truly loved that woman. Or did it seem so to him? The ambulance drove through the streets of London, caught in the flow of motorcycles. Through the walls, Julian observed those passing through the city. Bright sights, people approaching, life from which he felt detached in recent years. 3 years of his life were stolen by this disease. 3 years he was trapped by the bed of a woman who was dying. Neither career growth nor freedom, only infinite bills for the cure, which were paid with his money, down to the constant smell of medicine in her room. They spent much of their money on the cure, which would soon become his money. Before his eyes appeared the image of Elena. Bright footprints breaking behind her back, a young and firm body, her laughter carefree and fresh, like a spring wind. After meeting at the fitness club, where Clara had bought him a membership so he could enjoy himself, Elena became his oxygen, his chance to breathe in this kingdom of illness and fading. And now, when everything finally comes to an end, they will be able to be together. He thought about the calculations, the apartment in the centre, the country home, the bank accounts, the shares. He remembered the figures by heart, enough to start everything anew. With Elena, young, secure, Julian. The silence, resembling the rustle of winter leaves, Clara's voice broke him from his dreams. Her hand, dry, covered in the sharpness of bones, reached out to him. He took her hand, surprised by how heavy it had become, like bird bones. "We're almost there," he said, trying to make his voice sound soft. The machine accelerated along the road, turning into the gardens of their house in the Victorian estate with a view toward the river. Before, they were proud of this dwelling, a symbol of success. The home they bought when Clara's translation agency started to provide a serious income, the one she bought, with her money for them. "Thank you, Julian," Clara responded, squeezing his hand gently. "I wanted to spend the last days at home, where we were happy." Julian moved, not because of the touch, but because of these words, because of the gratitude that he did not deserve. In his throat, not from sadness, but from a strange and inappropriate feeling of shame. "Don't say that," he said, opening his eyes. "You will still get better." The lie broke from his lips, habitually, like a daily phrase. He no longer believed in recovery, if he ever really believed in it. The orderlies carefully took the gurney from the machine. The neighbour from the square, the old professor, came out to the stairwell, saw the procession, and moved quickly to the door, as if the disease were contagious. They brought Clara to the room, laid her on a wide bed, which Julian, earlier, had covered with fresh linens. The IV for the patient was placed on a special stand. The head nurse gave the final instructions, recorded the number of the home care service that should come every day. If there is great pain or it starts to hurt, call the ambulance. Do not wait for the morning. She left. And in her eyes, Julian read what she did not say. The end is near. When the door closed, silence hid in the room. Only the noise of the IV ruined it, like floor clocks reciting the final days or hours. "Do you need anything?" Julian asked, standing in the doorway of the room without deciding to enter. Clara shook her head, only to rest. "You are also tired, Julian. Go to sleep." He approached with ease. It became harder to pretend. "I am going to the room. Call if you need anything." Something was seen in her eyes, understanding, humility, but she only smiled again. Of course. Julian closed the door and went to the room, fell on the sofa without undressing. The exhaustion became heavier. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence of the room, waiting for it to end by morning. But in the depth of his soul, he knew it would not be so easy. Clara has always been a fighter. Even now, when only a shadow of her remained, she clung to life, with an effort that simultaneously admired and irritated him. The phone vibrated in his bag. News from Elena. How did it go? Is she home? Julian did not respond. Tomorrow he will tell Elena about his plan, about how they are going to free themselves from this nightmare once and for all. Clara did not sleep. The pain pulsed in every cell of her body despite the morphine. But years of illness taught her to coexist with the pain, to accept it as an inevitable spirit. She looked out the window at the night sky. The stars seemed especially bright, as if they were approaching to see her better or to greet a new soul that will soon join them. Death, she thought. My death. It is strange, but in this idea there was no fear, only sadness about the life that did not happen completely, about the dreams that remained unrealized, about the trips that she will not take, about the lessons that she will not read, about the children that she will never have, all her life, which she built with much work, the education she received at the price of sleepless nights and international translation work, her own agency finally built, a loving husband as he seemed to her. Everything broke under the pressure of the illness, like a castle of stones under a wave of rain. Until recently, she had something to think about regarding what did not happen, but rather what was lost. But now, looking at the stars, Clara felt a rare humility. Memento mori. She remembered the Latin phrase she once learned from a love of languages. Memento mori. The ancients believed it was not a dark reminder, but a call to value every moment of life. She thought of Julian, asleep in the adjacent room. Once a handsome, driven man with whom she fell in love so quickly and desperately. She saw in him the potential that he himself did not notice. She invested all her soul in him, all the resources to help him discover himself. Love is dark, she thought now, remembering his averted gaze when the orderlies brought her to her house, his impatient movements, the irritation that is poorly hidden. She did not blame him. 3 years of care for a dying wife could defeat anyone. To the door of her room came her cat, Bella, a beautiful Persian, whom they had acquired as a baby. Climbing onto the bed, she sat at Clara's feet, settling on the bed. Even the animal felt that its mistress was leaving. "Take care of him when I am gone," Clara whispered, looking at the window. Beside the window it began to glow. A new day, one of the last in her life. But something inside, perhaps intuition, perhaps simply the stubborn desire to refuse, shouted, "It hasn't ended yet. Your story hasn't ended." She closed her eyes, allowing morphine to finally take her to a waking dream where she was healthy again, stood again at the top of the mountain with a pack on her back, looking at the open world below, full of possibilities. Julian woke up quickly as if from a strike. The blue of the desert came out through the open windows. His mouth hurt, his nose hurt from the uncomfortable position on the sofa. "I don't remember when was the last time I slept in our marriage bed. Maybe a month before Clara went to the clinic. Maybe before." He reached for his phone. 6 in the morning. It is too early. In the room there was silence, which was diminished only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. That silence fell on him with all its weight. He expected to hear the cry, the sound, the call for help. But nothing. His heart raced. Is it not over? The idea, which he had been dismissing in recent months, now sounded boringly. Julian carefully opened the bedroom door. The morning light fell on Clara's face with its sunken lines. Her chest rose and fell. Alive. Something moved in him, not relief, but her virtuous opposition. A wave of anger rose inside, clogging his throat. Another day. Another infinite day of this torture. The kitchen met him with its sterile clarity due to infinite cleanings by the assistant from the clinic service. Julian brewed coffee, strong like his desperation. The first sip burned his throat. At that moment, from the bedroom, a fragile sound came. The spoon fell against the wall, broke into fragments. The yellow flowers sank through the throat, recalling the blood on the hospital walls that he saw so frequently. He approached the refrigerator and closed his eyes. Observing the interior, another morning surfaced, 10 years ago in the conference room of the international company where he saw her for the first time. Clara Evelyn Miller, symphonic, translated from English the speech of the general director. Her accurate, precise phrases sounded like music. She was standing straight in a strict burgundy-colored suit with her chestnut hair neatly pulled back. Julian, recently assigned as manager of the sales department, could not take his eyes off her. After the presentation, he found a purpose to approach. "What an incredible translation," he said. "It feels as if you are reading thoughts, not words." She smiled. "In a sense, that's how it is." "Good translation. It is a transmission of thoughts, not of words. Julian Miller, correct? The new manager?" She knew his name. He felt the blood rush to his arms. "Yes, 2 weeks, right? And you?" "Clara Miller, senior translator." She extended her hand. But, for friends, simply Clara. Her hand was strong and secure. Julian felt the aroma mixed of expensive perfume and coffee. "You have incredible English," he continued. "Where did you study?" "Oxford, then postgraduate in London." She responded with a smile that, as if to say, "I know my price." "But this is not my only language. There is also German, French, Spanish, and Czech, but the last is worse than the others." Julian was startled. "And how do you do it?" She looked at him, evaluating as if deciding if it were worth being sincere. Resistance, will, and no excuses. So began their story. He conquered her with his sincerity and ambitions, which at that moment he really didn't have. She impressed him with her will and intelligence. Their relations developed rapidly. In a year, they married, and Clara became his guide to the world he only dreamed of. It was she who convinced him to enter a prestigious business school, paying for his education. "It is an investment in our future," she said. Thanks to her connections, he met people who opened new possibilities for him. Together they built plans. When she decided to open her own translation agency, he supported her, although he himself did not believe in the success. But the agency grew. With his money, they bought this apartment with a view of the river. Everything changed in a moment. April, 3 years ago. Clara returned home white, with eyes red from tears. "I have cancer, Julian." It was like a blow to the breath. He was close, held her hands in the doctor's offices, promised her everything was going to be okay. And then, truly, that came from the heart. But the days added into a week into months. Hospital, ward, chemotherapy, hair loss, constant coughing. Her formerly blooming body turned into a ghost, and their life together into a nightmare. From Julian's memories, the doorbell rang. He moved and looked at the time, 8 hours, 43 minutes. Who else? At the door was Elena, bright, like an exotic flower in the middle of winter. Slim waist, open in fitting clothes, shiny hair, large blue eyes that gave her a resemblance to a pearl. In her hands, 2 large cups of coffee. "Why didn't you open for so long?" she asked capriciously, taking back one of the cups. Julian took it into the office, quickly closing the door. "Be quiet. She'll hear. My wife returned home yesterday." Elena's eyes widened, then she relaxed and smiled. She tried to kiss him, but he pulled away. "What's wrong?" "You said she was dying, so she can't get up." In her voice, there wasn't a bit of compassion, only a statement. Julian felt a touch of irritation. He went to the room, put the coffee on the table where they used to be, with the photograph of Clara. Prague, Vienna, Alps. Now, there were only books and cups with artistic colours. An allergy to the real appeared in Clara after the first course of chemotherapy. Elena approached him with the gait of a young predator that sensed the capture. Her sense, too sweet, too hard, broke the smell of hospitality and medicines that were eaten into the walls. Her body, warm and resistant, exhausted memories of the previous Clara. Eleanor touched his hand. "Let's go to the balcony. There they won't hear us." "Listen," she told him, pressing her palms to his eye. "Can't the process be accelerated? The doctors told you 2 weeks. And if it's a month? Or 2? You told me that everything stays with you." "What do you mean?" he asked, but his hands already instinctively gripped her arm. "I don't know," she made an innocent face. "Can there be a way to help her leave calmly, without suffering?" "It's mercy, right?" The words of mercy in her teeth sounded like a laugh. "But haven't you thought of that? Haven't you imagined how you would wake up once and everything would be over?" Slowly, he bent down. "I have an idea." Clara was with her eyes closed, her face distorted with pain. When she saw him, she smiled slightly. That smile broke his heart harder than any reproach. In it, there was such grace, such trust, that Julian, in an instant, grew warm. "I'm sorry for waking you," she told him. The tablet was not working. "It is the last time," he thought, taking her to the table. "Suddenly you won't have to suffer this pain." And he didn't know if it was a joy or a threat. The next morning began with an explosion of strength in Julian. He entered the room with a tray on which a tea was steaming, and there was a small piece of dried bread. All that Clara could keep in her stomach. His face shone with that desperate decision that she hadn't seen for a long time. "Clara." He sat on the edge of the bed, carefully, so as not to disturb her body, where every touch referred to pain. "I have found a way out." In his voice, something new was heard. Hope? Inspiration? Clara smiled softly. How many times in these 3 years have they gone through this? New medicine, experimental therapy, Dr. Miracle. How many times have they passed through desperation? "There is a healer," Julian continued, helping her to sit up against the pillows. He helped many with the same diagnosis. Mark told his brother of 2 children also. Well, you understand. The 4th stage, a desperate case. Now he is alive and well. Clara looked into his face, trying to discover the reason for this impulse, for this unexpected energy. She did not believe in miracles. 3 years of fighting cancer had eroded this wealth. But to see Julian like this, alive after months of apathy and hidden irritation, is our last chance. His voice moved, and in a second it seemed to her that tears shone in his eyes. "I have already packed the things." Only now she noticed the suitcase by the door. Everything was decided without her, as usually happens in recent times. But in this resolution, there was something of the previous Julian, of the one who did not give up, who believed in their common future. "Fine," she said. "Let's try it." Her dry tears moved like a smile. Julian turned away quickly and did not see how her face distorted. The preparations began. Julian moved through the room, gathering warm clothes, medicines, some products. He put everything in a large box. "Will we be there for a long time?" she asked Julian when he put her in travel clothes. "I don't know," he responded without looking her in the eyes. "Maybe a week, maybe more. Everything depends on the medication. In his fingers, in the speed of his movements, something bad surprised her. But with the effort of her will, she brushed off the doubts. Not now, when he is finally functioning. He is trying to do something. "Thank you," she said it in French, the language they spoke in the first years of their marriage. "You are my saving angel." She saw how these words struck him as if it were a physical blow. In an instant, she thought, "What is wrong with you, Julian? What are you hiding?" But the morphine again confused her consciousness, and the question remained unexplained. The road moved under the wheels, taking them farther from the city, from civilization, from previous life. First the highway, then the regional road, then the village road. The forest became deeper, the road out of sight. Clara slept, framed in the blanket, waking only from the jolts in the ruts, or when another wave of pain broke through the barrier of the medicine. In moments of light, she looked at the summer Taiga shone in red and gold, as if it were a silent fire. "How beautiful!" she shouted, looking at how the sunlight passed through the crowns of the trees, drawing patterns on the wall of the trees. Julian only moved without taking his gaze off the road. His hands nervously gripped the wheel. Sometimes he looked at the navigator, although the connection here almost couldn't be seen. In one of the moments in which Clara's consciousness vanished, she noticed his tension, almost an amazing alarm. "Julian, I know you do it for me." She touched his hand gently. "But if you don't succeed, just know that I am grateful for every day with you." The road flew quickly. Julian corrected the wheel, gritting through his teeth. "I'm sorry," he shouted. "The corner is on the road." But there was no corner. There was only this deserted forest road, and the weight of the words she pronounced, the words of sincere gratitude to the man who gave them to her at that moment. Deeper they went into the forest. Stronger became Julian's alarm. Twice he almost went off the road. In the second instance, he even stopped, turned off the engine, and sat for a few minutes, leaning on the wheel until his knuckles turned white. "What am I doing?" The idea pulsed in his head. Before his eyes appeared Elena's face, her predatory look, when she spoke of accelerating the process. Then the image changed. They with Clara at the ceremony, her bright face when she said yes. But then other images appeared, the sleepless nights, the tons of pain, the smell of medicine and the slipping away, the impossibility of going out, breathing, living. Eleanor again, young, healthy, desiring him, and the money, freedom. As if feeling the lapse, Clara slept in a dream. Julian returned to the car. "I owe her a debt," he convinced himself. Her death in the Taiga will be faster and easier than the painful death in the city apartment. This idea sounded like a justification, and he knew it, but he continued to hold on to it as if he had stepped into the sun. At 3 p.m, they reached their place. The old fisherman's house stood in a small clearing in the middle of cedars and leafy trees, as if it had settled into the earth. The wooden structure, open and dark from time, seemed forgotten by all except for time and nature that already started to present its rights. The moss on the north wall, the young sapling growing at the base. The pain, the shadow of recent years, pulsed in every cell of the body with a new, unforgettable force. The medicines remained in the box that Julian took with him. Water. The thought broke through the darkness of the pain. She heard the noise of the river through the window, so close and so unreachably far. In the darkness of the stars that penetrate through the cracks in the wall, Clara looked at the house. The door seemed an unreachable mirage, but the desire became real. To die of hunger a few meters from water? No. With the remnants of strength, she tried to sit up. The body did not listen. It seemed that her bones turned into a fragile circle. Each movement threatened to break them into thousands of fragments. Centimeter by centimeter, she slid from the bed. The fall to the floor was the effect of the intensity of pain, so intense that black shadows were seen again. She froze, pressing her face against the cold wall, waiting for the wave of agony to slide away. "Run! I must run!" On all fours, like a wounded animal, she headed to the door. Her thin fingers clawed due to the unevenness of the floorboards, finding a support in the knots of the ancient wood. Each movement, pain, but the instinct for life was stronger than the pain, stronger than the condemnation. At some point, her right hand met something dark, a splinter or a ring. Clara did not feel this new pain. Drops of blood left a fine trail, drops of blood in the forest of the ancient song, "Where is my Hansel?" She thought of Julian with the sad irony that she thought she had lost. The thought of her husband no longer provoked anguish nor pain. Only a strange surprise, like the possibility of reading the Bible incorrectly. In the pulsing of the pain, her desires began to emerge from the past. She is 7 years old and is on a stool in the kitchen of her neighborhood in a small town in the north. Her mother teaches her to cook dumplings, her hands in the flour, and a white wind through the window. "You are special, Clara," says her mother, putting the flour on the stool. "You will see a world that I will never see." She is 16 years old and sits until morning over books of English and German, repeating the verbs of the language of her mother. "I am going to get out of here," she says to her mother without sleeping. "I am going to be someone else." She is 23 years old and is on a bridge in Prague at the first international conference, where she was sent as a translator. The snow falls slowly on the city, and the water of the Vltava falls on her open palms. The whole world, she thinks. Now the whole world is open for me. She is 27 years old and meets Julian, a handsome but insecure man. In Julian's eyes, she also sees a desire to escape that was in her. "I am going to make you happy," she promises Julian and herself. "We will conquer this world together." She is 35 years old, and the doctor looks at her with a special attention with which he says terrible things. "Hodgkin's lymphoma," he says. "But we have good treatment protocols, good chances." She moves as in a dream, thinking that her agency has only started to obtain a large income, that they have so many plans, that life only starts to grow. Where did I go wrong? This question pulsed in her unconscious consciousness while she followed her painful path toward the door. There were no mistakes, only life which does not ask permission. "Clara," she said, "son brought to die." She did not know why she said that, and already did not see how the face of the stranger blurred. "I, Arthur, told her through the darkness, you will not die, not today." Consciousness returned very slowly. Clara felt the heat. Real, living heat, not the heat of the disease. She was covered by something hard and soft. The woolen blanket wrapped her, opening her eyes. Arthur loomed over the stove, mixing something in a pot. The taste of herbs filled the house, the wound and the brightness. Clara understood that it was another home. "You woke up," he stated, turning toward her. "Good. Can you drink the tea?" He helped her up and brought to her lips a cup with a liquid, dark and sweet. "It is tea with rhodiola. The shaman only taught me to cook. From all illnesses it helps." Clara took a sip and died from the sweetness. Arthur smiled slightly. With a single eye, the head hidden the movement of the lips. "I know it's a shame, but drink Life is frequently sweet, but must be drunk with full sips. In his words, his own experience and his own pain sounded. He came to her without difficulty and drinking it until the end. "Take it," he said, taking the cup. He came to her and drinking it until the end, and drinking it until the end. He came to her and drinking it until the end. He came to her the legs. His amber eyes did not stop from her face. Clara raised her hand with incredible effort and touched his head. The head became unexpectedly soft. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel absolutely alone. The most difficult moment began: illness, lies, traps and pain, when it seemed that the body was breaking into parts. Arthur did not distance himself from Clara, drank broth, cleaned, changed the bandage. Sometimes she forgot again. Sometimes she felt in reality, which seemed as liquid as dreams. Sometimes it seemed to her that she saw a bright tunnel, heard the voices of her parents calling her to themselves. "Clara, come to us. There is no pain here." But something held her. Perhaps the heat of a large dog at her feet, perhaps the warm voice of Arthur, who was reading Turgenev in her ear, in the light of a candle. Nature is not a temple, but a laboratory. A man in it is a worker. He read, and his voice, deep, with a slight smile, became a bridge between worlds, keeping her on the left of the living. "And I always considered nature a temple," she thought, falling again into a hard sleep. In the madness, she spoke in all the languages she knew. French and Spanish phrases changed to German verses, to English words, to Czech figures. Arthur listened in silence. Only in the French phrases he responded in the same language. "Do you speak French?" she asked him once. "In another life." He responded, changing the compress on her forehead. "In another life." She understood that in this hard man there is also a story. His path is a loss that led him to this hard dream. The days turned into night, the night again into days. Sometimes through the tumor, the pain and the heat, she noticed how Arthur prepared new infusions, gathered the vegetables, verified her pulse, hovered, looking at her white face. Sometimes she felt the humid air of the nose on her hand, his warm side on her bed. Life and death fought for her, and it seemed that death was winning. And then arrived the moment of the loss. In one of the nights, she did not know why, Clara opened her eyes and saw Arthur sleeping in the seat near her bed. His strong hand was over the blanket, as if even in dreams he wanted to be sure that she was breathing. The desert gilded his tired face, turning his red hair into a glow of wood. Beside the window there was a new day, clear, pure, like the first day of creation. Clara looked at that light, and something inside of her referred to its call. She made her choice. She chose life. In the Siberian taiga, time flows differently. Autumn changed with winter unconsciously, as if the white red fell on the earth in dreams. When the first snow fell, Clara was still on the border. Her body fought against the disease like a warrior with the superior forces of the opponent, remembering to return to the battle. 2 hard months passed between life and death, time not measured by the hours, but by the attacks of heat, the pains and the silence that read Turgenev at night. At some point, a disaster occurred. The snow was behind the window with a very hard bucket when she woke up one morning and realized that she could breathe with her chest full of blood without pain, entering into the arms with the red ribbons. The sun came out through the window on the stone floor, drawing golden patterns. Clara was asleep, observing the golden patterns dancing in the sunlight. And for the first time in much, much time, she did not want to close her eyes and disappear. The weakness still moved in the body, but she felt the energy of the weakness barely visible, but real, like the first bird in the snow. "Welcome back," he said in French, and the smile, the true transforming face of his, lit up his eyes. "Thank you for bringing me back," responded in the same language. The recovery was slow, like the movement of the bird, almost invisible from the part, but unforgettable. Each day, Clara felt how the forces returned to her. First, she could only sit up, leaning on the back. Then, sit up, leaning on the back. The first steps toward the window became a small victory, which was celebrated with a special tea of sugar and honey. At night, when the clouds closed in the house and the fire in the fireplace drew dancing shadows on the walls, she learned to know this silent man. Arthur's story opened little by little in fragments, like a mosaic that was joined on a wall. "I was a biologist," he said once, stirring coal in the fire. "I studied the medicinal plants of Siberia. I worked in an academic institute, then I founded my own laboratory. There were grants, international conferences, articles in Nature." He spoke emotionlessly as if he were a foreigner, but in the movement of his arms the pain of loss was felt. "I had a partner, Andrew. We met in university, we started the business together." He remained silent, looking at the fire. "I had 10 years of friendship. I considered him like a brother." The clouds smiled in the silence, and the north breathes in silence. "What happened?" Clara asked him in silence, although she had already realized. "He stole my studies, formulas, developments, results and exams, everything that I have worked on during 15 years. He made documents, he patented in his name. And when I tried to prove it?" He laughs with pain. "He accused me of financial machinery. He snatched me with news of the grants. There was investigation, tribunal. I almost left for prison." Clara listened in silence, giving him the word. "During 6 months I have lost everything," Arthur continued. "Job, money, reputation. My wife left, not supporting the sudden poverty. She broke everything valuable in my house, even my scientific archives." He moved his head. 10 years of marriage were diminished like hunger. No one believed in my innocence. When everything ended, I realized that I could not stay more with the people. He became silent, and Clara did not startle him. By the window, the wind moved the cross of mist. I was on the border. Finally, he continued. "I thought of dying. I came here, to this house. I wanted to write a goodbye and—" He didn't finish. Instead of that, he looked at Leo, who, upon feeling the attention, raised his massive head and put his nose in his hand. And then I found him, or rather, he found me. A loser, wounded, with a broken leg, but not broken. Probably a former dog that they had taken out by misfortune. His voice rises. I see something in his eyes, something familiar, and I decided that if he fights, I also will do it. Clara understood that she was crying when she felt wet on her palms. "And you chose life," she said calmly. "Both of us chose," shouted Arthur. "Now it seems that you too." With the arrival of forces, Clara started to interest herself in the healing plants that Arthur gathered. First, out of curiosity, then with an enthusiasm. Once, when she already could sit at the table, he brought to her a couple of books that had been worn. "Do you want to see my records?" he asked her, and his voice had insecurity, as if opening these books started to reveal the soul. The records turned out like gifts, pages that were written with a small and accurate script, with drawings of vegetables, recipes of infusions, notes on the seasonality and the methods of preparation, together with scientific names, notes of the population on the beaches, quotes of the ancient herbalists, multilingual knowledge. "You must publish this," she exhaled, leafing through the pages. He moved his head. Moved? For whom? The academic world is closed for me, and the pharma companies don't need herbs, but synthetic analogues that can be patented. Clara raised her gaze from the books. For the people to whom it can save life. For me? She only touched his arms, but she noticed how something moved in his face. "This is my new laboratory," he said later, taking her to the back and waving his hand over the misty Taiga. "I have found here what I have sought all my life. Medicines that not only suppress the symptoms but that recover the balance in the organism." The sun shone in the mist, turning a normal winter day into a fantastic wall. Clara breathed deeply the cold air, full of the smell of pine. "And the earth breathed," she shouted, a phrase from a German poem that she had translated. "On the white skin." Arthur continued unexpectedly. Their gazes met, and in that moment, something moved like ice in the spring wind. Any true knowledge begins with emotions, Kant remembered, observing her own body, which recovered with an incredible speed. The hair, which broke after the chemotherapy, returned again, thick, with an unexpected rosy tone, as if the Taiga left her its mark. The skin turned into a healthy color. The forces arrived each day. At first, she started to go out to the porch, to breathe the cold air, to observe the birds, to look at the queen of the clearing. Then, to take short walks with Leo, who adapted to her slow pace. Each day a little further, each day a little more secure. At night, they sat on the porch, talking about everything in the world. Arthur was a man with encyclopedic knowledge, with a sense of humor and a deep understanding of life. Without falseness, without pretension. Only the pure essence of his personality crystallized in the solitude of the Taiga. She told him of her travels, her languages, her books, those that she loved. He listened with sincere interest, sometimes asking unexpected and deep questions that made her look at habitual things anew. "You know 5 languages?" he noted once. "And I am thinking in which of them you see dreams." Clara remained with a cup of tea in her hand. "No one ever asked me that." They found many points of contact, like 2 solitary islands between which suddenly a bridge was created. He knew the lyrics of Rilke. She could quote Heine in the original. He loved jazz, she classical opera, but both recognized that Vivaldi touched something deep in the soul. "I never thought that I would discuss the 4th concerto of the Brandenburg Bach cycle in an island in the middle of the Taiga," she said with laughter. "I neither," responded he, and his eyes, normally serious, shone in the lights of fire. Spring approached unconsciously, carefully. The snow flew from the wall. Once, during a walk, they came out to the bridge that started to liberate itself from the ice. The water came out crystal clear, full of water, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, crystal clear, and the water came out 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 crystal clear, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out crystal clear, crystal clear, and the water came out 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 crystal clear, and the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, crystal clear. And the water came out, and the water came out crystal clear, and the water came out. The investigation initiated by Leventhal showed the scandal of the betrayal. Julian not only announced her death, offering false documents, but almost discarded her partners, placed a machine, tried to sell a dasher in the countryside that Clara received as an inheritance from her grandmother. During all these months, he lived with Elena, a young lover whom Clara did not even suspect. In her apartment, without hiding his happiness from common friends, videos of social networks that her former partner in the agency showed her made her heart cry. Julian and a blonde of effect in the background of her home library. The same two on the coast of Turkey. Selfie in a restaurant where they and Julian once celebrated their anniversary. He told everyone that she suffered in the hospice and then found peace, Marina told administrator of the agency when they met in a small cafe. And you know, many envied her. What pain! And he who carries himself well even found a new friendship. He said that they themselves blessed him for new relations before death. Clara listened in silence, turning in her hands a cup of tea. There was neither reason nor hatred, only pain, disillusion, and decision. He even made a memorial in her honor. Marina continued, avoiding looking her in the eyes. What a beautiful word. He spoke of how talented you were and of how much you meant to him. Everyone cried. Everyone cried. It was strange to hear about her own memories, about how people with whom she worked, loved, built plans, mourned her. "I'm sorry, Clara," responded Marina, finally deciding to raise her eye. "I should have suggested something, but he was like that, convincing." "Don't blame yourself," responded Clara. "He also convinced me that he loved." Clara provoked a case not only of divorce, but also of fraud and murder. She did not want revenge, she wanted justice. The trial was difficult. Julian had good lawyers, paid, perhaps with her money. He rejected everything, presenting the case as if it were a mistake, as if he really took her to the hospice, and they had informed him of her death. Being in the courtroom with him, Clara remembered how once she looked into those eyes and believed in every word, in every promise. How naively we trust handsome men, how we want to see depth where there is only shallow water. But Clara was consistent, her indications were exact, and the more the process advanced, the more Julian's lie was revealed. The evidence of her death was a falsification. The expertise showed that the signatures in the documents about the transaction of funds were forged. "You were supposed to die there," he shouted at her. "You were supposed to die." In that moment, in that explosion of unexpected hatred, Clara saw the true Julian. Not a mask of a careful husband or a lawyer dead of pain, but a man to whom her life became an obstacle. The court sentenced him to 8 years in a maximum security colony for fraud on a very large scale and for murder. Elena, who faced the denunciation in the association, gave all the evidence against him in exchange for time. In the final session, Clara looked at the man with whom she lived 10 years and felt a strange emptiness. Neither misfortune nor triumph, only a tranquility that justice triumphed. "You will die anyway," Julian shouted when they took him from the hall. "Maybe not today, but soon. Your cancer will return." Clara smiled, sincerely, with calm. "We all will die someday, Julian, but I, unlike you, will live my life completely until the last day." In the middle of the judicial process, Clara obtained access to part of her funds and bought a small and comfortable home on the border of the city, in a clean, ecological area near the forest. Not in the center, not in the prestigious neighborhood, but where the air is cleaner and the stars are more seen. She arranged it with ease but with taste. Bright walls, warm wood, a minimum of things, no wealth, no outstanding richness. Only what truly is necessary for life. In the room, she hung a watercolor with the view of the Taiga lake painted from her memory. At night, she stayed on the porch, looked at the stars and thought of the Taiga, of the houses in the forest, in the person and the dog that saved not only her life, but also her soul. Sometimes it seemed to her that she heard the distant noise of a volcano that came out in the night, but it was only the wind in the crowns of the trees. "I will return," she said to the stars, repeating the promise she gave at the door of the forest. I should return. And somehow, from the depth of my soul, I felt sure that after all this path, I finally know where my real home is. 2 days later, despite waiting until the final document was made, she loaded into a new truck everything necessary: warm clothes, products, the medicine chest, the lessons. In the box was an old iPhone with navigator with a charged battery. "Are you sure?" asked Anna, looking at the open window. "You don't know if he is still there." Clara smiled, waving the hand. "I don't know, but I must check." For 5 months, she waited for that moment. For 5 months of judicial sessions, of instructions, of the bureaucratic chain. For 5 months, each night she slept thinking of her real home, with fear and hope, thinking of the person who saved her life, and then her soul. The road, which stretched to eternity in a state of semi-tranquility, now was known by every turn. London remained behind, changing from neighbourhoods, then from the fields, from the villages, from the forests. Farther from the capital, calmer she felt in her heart. During the last 100 kilometres by the roads, she moved with much care. The autumn rains broke the road, turning it into a line of obstacles. The bus did well, but sometimes she went out to check the state of the wheels and the bottom. When the forest started to weep, the heart broke like madness, and suddenly she went. Suddenly she decided that he never would return. Suddenly, during those months, something irreparable happened. But because of the trees, she realized the light. And behind it, a building of walls without damage, with a wisp of smoke and chimneys. Far from the wall appeared a tall figure, disappearing through the corridor of the building. And Clara remained for a moment, without being able to believe her eyes. He is here. He stayed. Breathing deep, she opened the door and went out. The cold air of autumn, full of pine and humid of rice, envelops her like an embrace of an old friend. Through the depth of the forest a bark was given to the stone, harsh, shaking. And in that moment, from the side of the house, a cry was given. First, agitated, attentive, and then happy, dull. To the clearing, with large steps, came Leo. With a volcano of joy, he knocked over Clara, almost without falling. His tail whipped through the air like a propeller. His eyes were fixed to the head with happiness, and the tongue passed over her hands, trying to lick her face. "Yes, yes, I also dreamed of you," responded she, opening her hands in his fur. In the part of the house, a figure appeared. Arthur stood without moving, as if he were afraid that the vision would disappear if he took a step. He changed during those months. He grew thin, he slid, and bone silver was seen in his hair. He didn't believe in my return, she understood. He felt it as a new loss. Clara went slowly to the house. Each step was made with difficulty, as if the legs were sinking in the invisible floor. Leo went to one side, then went forward, then returned, as if he were an escort of honor. I came back. Simply, she said, stopping several steps from the porch. Arthur looked at her as if he were looking at a miracle, with distrust, fear, and hidden hope. "You are here." Finally he said it, and his voice was like a cry, as if he were not talking. "Are you truly here?" "I promised you." She smiled. His face moved, His uncertain smile touched his lips, but the eyes still were attentive. "You. How are you?" he asked her, without moving from his place. "Now it is fine," responded she. "Justice was restored. Julian is in prison for fraud and for murder." He shouted as if he confirmed some of her thoughts. "And the illness?" "Total remission. The doctors say that it is a miracle of medicine." She paused. "But we know that there is no miracle. Only your herbs, the pure air, and hope." Finally, he stepped down from the wall, made a few steps toward her. He stood so close that she felt the smell of pine and the humidity of his clothes. "I have bought a home," she said, looking him in the eyes. "A real and good home, not far from the village, but surrounded by forest. There is a place for your plants, for your investigations, for the three of us, for you, me, and Leo." She extended her hand, palm upward, a simple gesture, without words. "Will you go with me?" Arthur looked at the palm of her hand, then to the distance, to the forest, and Clara saw how, in his eyes, the struggle, the desire to be with her, and the fear of returning to the world to which once he had brought. "I am not the same person that lived in the village," he said, without words. "I don't know if I will return to be among the people, the noise, the bustle. Here everything is simple, understood." She understood his fears. She also felt it returning to the city after months in the life of Taiga. The noise, the bustle, the artificial light, the polluted air, all that was felt again, accustomed to the natural rhythm of nature. "We will live as we want again," she said, without words. "This will be our world, our island, but you will be able to continue your research, helping the people with your knowledge." She approached a step closer, without withdrawing the hand. "I want to open a small clinic where you could practice your natural medicine, combining it with traditional methods. Think how many people you will be able to save as you saved me." He became silent, but in his eyes she saw the reflection of her own hope. "The world should not lose the light that you have in you," she added in French, quoting a poet whom both loved. While they spoke, Leo ran between house and car, as if he tried to understand what was happening. Suddenly he approached the truck, approached the back seat, through the open door, and settled there, opening his mouth and looking at them. Arthur and Clara looked at the dog, then at the two, and in their words, something new started to happen. Understanding, relief, hope. Arthur laughed for the first time in all the time of their encounter. "It seems that Leo has already decided," he said. "It is time for us." And suddenly both started to laugh sincerely with relief, as if they had not laughed for a long time. But that laugh was like the first rain of spring after a long winter, that cleaned the promises of the new life. In that moment, something finally moved like the last piece in the complicated puzzle. Arthur took her open hand, and his fingers joined with her fingers, not only in the touch, but in the promises. "I need to gather the things," he said simply. While Arthur was gathering, Clara waited outside, giving to him the opportunity to be alone with his home, which became his refuge and salvation. Through the window, she saw how he slowly walked through the rooms, touching the wooden walls as if he said goodbye to his friend. He packed little. In his library, with records, dried herbs, some books, a small wooden chest. Beside the house, he stood before an altar made by himself. Photograph of an old couple, with a wooden frame, a small crystal of mountain crystal. Parents. Arthur stood before this improvised altar with his head bowed, and then told him in silence, "Thank you." And one didn't know if he thanked the superior forces of his parents or to this home that became his refuge in the darkest of their lives. Clara observed in silence and knew the sanctity of this moment. When Arthur left the home for the last time, she noticed how a tear broke from him, but his steps were firm. He was ready for a new path. "You can return here at any moment," she said in silence, when he closed the door and hid the key under the ring. "This place is not going to go anywhere," he shouted, looking at the clearing, as if he remembered each detail. "I know, but for some reason it seems to me that we are going to build something better together." When they got in the car, Leo already had taken his place in the seat. Arthur, for the last time, looked at the home through the window. "Probably one has to close the window and conserve the home." "I am not sure," he said. "We will return in the spring," responded with certainty Clara, pushing the engine. "We are going to plant a tree. We are going to gather the first herbs. This will be our second home, ours, dacha." She laughed. The car moved from its place, slowly crossing the clearing. "Are you afraid?" she asked, not taking her eyes from the road. "Yes," responded honestly he. "And you?" "Also." She smiled. "But we have already suffered the worst that could happen to us. After that, the city... It's a joke." Arthur leaned back, relaxing, logically. The road closed among the trees, taking them back to civilization, but now the path was not an exit, but a return, not a loss, but an attainment. For a time, they went in silence, full of the noise of the wheels of the road and of the hard breathing of Leo. "Do you know that Hodgkin's lymphoma before was considered incurable?" She decided to ask Arthur. Afterward, the doctors and the researchers found ways to be cured, especially effective in the phase of illness, and now it is one of the most curable types of lymphoma. "What do you mean?" asked Arthur. To that, none of these researchers gave up, even when everyone around considered their work useless. She gave him a quick look. "Maybe your knowledge helps to defeat the illnesses that today are considered incurable," he thought, looking at the forest that passed by the window. When he spoke again, a new note appeared in his voice, the confidence that he had not heard before. "You are right. If I can help someone, as I helped you, then everything has sense." Clara smiled without stopping from the road. The city waited ahead with all its difficulties, noise, problems, but now it was not an enemy world, but another landscape in their common path. "Our path only starts," she said calmly. "And together we are going to go very far," responded Arthur with a smile. In the back seat, Leo calmly slept in his sleep, as if he had dreamed of the pursuit of a forest animal. At the front, after the turn, the sky lit up. The dawn of a new day approached. A year passed since that day when Clara and Arthur returned to the city. Their clinic of natural medicine on the outskirts of London became a place of hope for those who gave up seeking help in traditional medicine. His book, Languages of Health, The Secret of the Siberian Taiga, was translated into several languages, and every few months they go to their home of Taiga for a couple of weeks, where Leo can run through the forest at his will, and they can breathe the freedom that before saved them both. Thank you for having spent time with our heroes. If you had found in yourselves the courage after having suffered betrayal, would you open again your heart? And what does true salvation mean for you? Only a physical recovery or something much more? If this content has touched your soul, don't forget to put a like and share it with your friends, because that is how the light floods into the dark points of this world, from heart to heart. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so as not to miss new stories about love, betrayal, survival, and about resurrection. And of course, watch the playlist under this video, where you will find all the stories of our channel. Remember that your own story is written each day, and who knows, maybe your great challenge will someday turn into your great blessing.